Let me put this down. Okay, we can start again. Ready, recording?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So 23 out of 24 is good. And you got there, right? Yeah, okay. So that's really good. We're working with a piece of open source software. We're working with a program that's making a browser do things that Firefox, Google, Microsoft, etc. are trying to prevent us from doing, which is editing in a browser. And so we kind of fight with the browsers all the time. The reason we're using TiddlySpot, it's a little funky because you're actually using them to host your page. When you load your TiddlySpot, you actually have it local. When you save it, it pushes it back to the server. And that's fine. There's some problems with that in the long term. For example, sometimes TiddlySpot goes away. And it's like, I don't know. And so we might try to work on other solutions, but in the meantime, we can stick with TiddlySpot. And what I want to do now is kind of walk through a couple of things. You'll see that there's still a little piece of infrastructure that I still have to build. So between now and Thursday, I'm going to ask you to complete your assignment and submit it, but you'll have to log back onto DesignWrite Studio probably tonight. I'll figure it, or at least it'll be set up for tomorrow. And as long as I have it by Thursday, then that's fine when we talk again. What I want to do is take a little bit of a brief discussion about the class, show you a little bit about how the thing I've built, and then encourage you to just play in my first wiki and see what you can do. And I'll sort of end the discussion in I'll go for about 30 minutes here about different stuff, and then show you a couple things that you can play with, and all of which I'm going to review again on Thursday. Okay. There's lots to go on, but sort of once you get into the program, then the rest of it will become clear. Oh yeah, sorry, that's like a major safety hazard. Okay. DesignWrite Studio opens here. I've got the default set to hello there. Hello there, you'll see, is sort of standard TiddlyWiki world. Everybody's Tiddlers start with hello there. A brief tour. Everything that you're seeing, the colors, some of the placement of the buttons and stuff is stuff that I've customized, and you can do that too. I said before, this opens and closes the sidebar, which is nice because it gives your Tiddler sort of like more space to see, and then this is a sort of a navigation thing. When you get lost in hypertext, which is the title of one of the articles we'll be reading, you can always, in my Tiddlers, I always put a home button on there, which just says, okay, fine, whatever's open, close it, start over. It refreshes in a sense without refreshing it's the same as doing a refresh on the browser, sort of, but it just takes you home. DesignWrite Studio is a link. You can tell because it's written in camel case. So when you write words in camel case, they automatically become links. And it links it links to that Tiddler. So if I click on DesignWrite Studio, it's going to open up a Tiddler called DesignWrite Studio. Okay. And now we've got two Tiddlers stacked on top of each other. And they have this little border around them. And so a Tiddler is an object that has stuff in it. Code, text, it's got stuff in it. I can make it do things. Every Tiddler has its own set of buttons, its own little toolbar that's just to that Tiddler. These toolbars out here are to the whole wiki. This is just to this Tiddler. This will give me more info, tells me all the other things I can do. And I can delete this Tiddler. You can delete this Tiddler. Because if you're if you're viewing DesignWrite Studio, you can delete everything you want because it's your copy. You can do whatever you want to it. Destroy it, whatever. You can't touch mine. because it's your own copy of the wiki. If you do this in my first wiki, that's yours, it's gone. But at least it's not gone in mine. Okay, so I'm not gonna delete this. Little bit of info. I don't know what all this stuff is. You might find it over time what it is. Most of it, I don't play with that. I can make a copy of it. I can clone it. I can export it. Somebody was excited that it exports to JSON. You can export it as a plain HTML. You can do all sorts of things. Basically run this as a web server. We're going to skip most of those. We'll talk about this when we talk about tagging. Create a new tiddler tagged with this one. This allows me to edit it, and this will close it. So I'm going to close it, go back, and now I can edit it. Okay. And now you begin to see a little bit of code, okay? If I want to see, I'm going to close my sidebar and expose the view, which is the last button in the toolbar. So now on my right, it's how it's being presented. On my left is my code. So it's almost like a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. Almost WYSIWYG, but it's like if I put stuff in there, it shows up immediately. So it's really fast. You know, there's no processing. It's just sort of like a live editor, but on your left is the code, on your right is how it's going to be displayed. And so eventually you'll learn some of this stuff. I've got my tagline there, which is what's called transcluded, and I'm going to throw a lot of words out in this conversation now, which will come back over and over again in the class. So I'm just going to use these words so that your mind gets used to hearing them. I'm transcluding the field called tagline, which is down here, tagline, okay? And then I'm using something called stretch, and I'm going to give you a quick demo of interactive text, and I'm using a technique called stretch text, which actually dates from the 60s. This concept of stretch text, and we'll read about the guy, Ted Nelson, who came up with a lot of the ideas that we work with. I can click on designing and writing interactive texts. That's where design write comes from. So see what I'm doing there? It's like, it's kind of interactive. I mean, this is really kind of silly, but it's still fun. Here's another version of it, designing and writing interactive texts. So I can close these up. I can close this up, I think, yeah. So that's sort of a quick version of interactive text. The code for that is here. And what's kind of cool about this is you can copy this code, go back and make a new tiddler and paste it, and it works. And then you can modify it. So we do a lot of copy paste. You take other people's code and you use it. You rarely start fresh, especially when you're starting. You just, oh, that's cool. How did they do that? You drag over their tiddler, you put it in yours, and you mess with it. So it's a lot of collaborative code writing. So you'll see somebody else, that's a cool thing. How'd they do that? You bring over their code and you play with it. Okay, and that's the way that game designers work. That's the way a lot of coders work, web designers. Rarely is stuff written fresh. I don't want my new Tiddler 3, so I'm just going to trash it. Yeah, I'm going to delete it. Okay. When I'm trying new things out, I frequently go to TiddlyWiki.com. I write my code in TiddlyWiki.com, and it works, and then I bring it over to mine. Because if it works in TiddlyWiki.com, it should work in mine. And that's a very clean, pristine environment. So you can delete stuff. And do I discard the changes? Yeah. And so I am actually editing the production version of my wiki, the one that's served on TiddlyWiki, on designwritestudio.com. It's actually in GitHub. Anybody use GitHub? James, anybody else use GitHub? Okay. You should all use GitHub, especially IMGD majors. If you decide you want to tackle that this semester, I'd be glad to support it. My version, my developed version of DesignWrite Studio, the one that I actually write in, is sitting in GitHub. This is being locally served in Node.js. Anybody familiar with Node.js? Okay, so you don't need to do it. But if you decide you want to get into like a true coding environment, as opposed to TiddlySpot, then I can certainly help you with that. Okay, back to DesignWrite Studio. I'm just going to refresh it. And it says, do you want to reload the site? Changes you've made to not be saved? And say, yeah, I don't want any of those changes. I'm going to start fresh. These buttons here, home is the same as this one up here. The plus creates a new tiddler. This creates a new journal tiddler, which just creates a new tiddler with today's date and the tag journal. And you might start keeping a journal of the stuff that you're doing in My First Wiki and play around with that. This allows you to import JSONs, images, all sorts of stuff. The control panel we looked at briefly. Everything is fully configurable. Everything. So the info, we set the default. If I want to turn off, if I want to change my colors, I can go to a different color theme. That's not bad. You can make your own. That's the one we're using. Live with, oh, whoa, that's pretty awful. Not too bad. I'm going to go back to my the one that I wrote. The story view, if I want to set it to zoom in, one tiddler at a time. So every time you go to a new tiddler, the old one disappears. Classic is multiple tiddlers at a time. And play with settings, all the stuff you can play with, and it's really hard to break it, but not impossible. TiddlySpots are free, so when you break it, you just make a new one. Saving, you don't mess too much with. Plugins, we're going to talk about how you can bring plugins in. These are the plugins that I'm using. We use a lot of them. I don't mess with keyboard shortcuts and XLSX utilities. We're going to get to in like exercise 3 or 4, I think. The appearance is something that's fun to play with. You can change the theme. TiddlySpot tends to come with not much themes, but let's suppose that I wanted to, here's my first wiki. If I wanted to bring heavier font theme over, I can drag and drop, import, reload, and let's get back to the control panel. And now I can set the theme to heavier. That's drag and drop, by the way, works really well within the browser. If you're running 2 separate browsers, like if you got Firefox and Chrome running, you can't drag across browsers, so you have to work within the same browser. You can do that for any tiddler. You just drag a tiddler over and it installs. When you're tired of all those tools, I can get rid of, these are the tools up here in the view toolbar. If I don't want some of these, like if I don't want the, like the page toolbar, sorry, if I don't want the home button, I turn it off, get rid of the new journal, get rid of import, get rid of theme and story view. You see my tools are, so you can, again, turn on and off all these things, and they stick so that the next time you come there, the way that you left it is how you'll see it. I sometimes make mistakes in DesignWrite Studio, and I'll leave things in the wrong state. It's called state, like how are things left. And so when you come up and say, that's bizarre, all that stuff's different than last time, that's because I forgot to reset it for the users. When you edit stuff, actually the view toolbar is what you see on a tiddler, and you might decide that you'd like to see these info buttons, and you want a clone and a permalink and a permaview. We'll talk about what those all are, so I'm going to hit more buttons, and so now I see them in my tiddler. So you've got the page and the tiddler. Okay. This is all good stuff to start with, so you begin to see what these things different. Those are your basic tools. I never use fold. Some people like them. I'm not a big fold fan. I think they fold up the tiddler so that you can only see the title or something. I don't know what it does. Let's see what fold does. That's why I don't use it, because I never figured it out. But people like, I don't know. So I skip fold. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to reload because I've been playing. So I've left this. I play with different themes. I mess around. I try to leave it in classic view, although sometimes you'll see it in zoom, and this is your automatic save button. These are called sidebars, Contents Tools, Recent, Open, More, and Display. Display is a custom sidebar that I've created, and you can read about how to create a sidebar. And I list all of my templates. Templates come in about like week 4. So there's lots of things that we're heading towards. This lists all the different tags I'm using. Tags come next week. These are what's called my missing tiddlers, things that I have links to that don't exist yet. So what's kind of cool is that you build a link to something that doesn't exist, which doesn't return a 404. It says, oh, you're going to want to build that tiddler someday. So I'm going to go ahead and sort of create it in the background, and when you click on it, then I'll bring it into existence. Very different thought than the way we build web pages. If you build a web page to a link that doesn't exist, the link is there, you click on it, it doesn't create the page for you. That would be cool, but it doesn't. And I'm going to skip most of that. I've listed these contents, and my wiki defaults to contents. And what I've done is I've listed every class by date. So here's today. Here's Thursday, next week, etc. Down here, I've built the first, previous, next, last navigation system. So you can go to the first class, you can go to the last class, you can go to the previous class, or the next class. And some of you might decide one of the frequent projects that students do in this class is they build like an interactive text that has a bunch of photographs. Okay, so you might have a bunch of photographs. I think in last spring somebody built their photo essay or photo site that had bunches of pictures of their kid. And he tagged each photograph for what season it was, fall, winter, spring, summer, and who else was in the picture, grandma, grandpa, mom, and dad, and what the emotions of the kid were, happy, sad, I don't know, ecstatic, disappointed. So from every picture, you can go first, previous, next, last, based on each of those tags. So that's like a multi-dimensional photo essay. And so that's what I've built. This is the same logic. And so you can take that code and put it in your wikis as well. This is called a chevron or an angle bracket. Typically, those are turnable. So you click there and they'll expose it. You'll see that every class has a presentation, except for after spring break. I don't know what we're going to talk about. Kind of depends on where we get to. So they're all called to be determined. Every class has a workshop up to spring break. Again, I don't know what we do after spring break because it kind of depends on who's in the class and where we get to and what your interests are. And almost every class has an exercise that's associated with it. And again, everything is built to a tiddler. So the exercise 1.01, which is the one you're working on today, called Hello World, due tomorrow. Most of you have finished it already. It's explained in this workshop, which is the one we're doing now. And there are, where to go? And there's some directions. So you've done the first one. You can't join the Google group yet because there's no link there. You can't write a message on the group introducing yourself because I haven't told you how to get there yet. And you can't share your wiki on the submission form because I haven't built it yet. But those are the 3 things I'm going to do today. I'm always going to run behind. So once I figure that out, I will send you all another email message saying, hey, you can go back and now you can join the group. Most of the communication that we'll have as a class will happen in the Google group rather than in Blackboard. Nothing for this class is going to be on Blackboard. Everything's going to be on a wiki, or in all of the conversation is going to be in the Google group. So I'm going to ask you to write a brief message introducing yourself just to prove that you can actually post something to the Google group. And every wiki that you build, we share. And so I'll import the links and spreadsheets, and I'll show you how you can connect spreadsheets to wikis. And then you can see everybody else's. I should have mentioned that early on. The class is built on an open source concept, in that everything you build, you share with other people. So it's not stealing to take other people's code. It's called collaborating. And I welcome it, encourage it. Sometimes we'll insist on it. So you'll find other people's code and bring it in. But when you've got questions, ask in the group. If you know the answer, answer it. If you say, oh, I've had that problem too, then say, oh, I've had that problem too in a response message. And when there's like 4 people with the same problem, then I'll definitely respond quickly. Not that I want if there's one person, but if you've got an issue or a question, how do I do this? And you'll learn how to put snippets of code in the Google group, and we'll learn how to share stuff that way. So I'm going to finish these directions today, or I'm not sure I'll get to it tonight, but I should, or at least first thing in the morning. And so you should be able to share that as long as you do it by class on Thursday. That will be fine. Okay. And so, where are we? 16th. So like I said, every class has a presentation. I've lost in hyperspace again, so I'll restart. Every class has an exercise. They're really short. Some of them are long, and as we get more into the semester, you'll get more deeply into what we're doing. And then once all the software issues are settled and Derek's Tiddly spot is working and everybody can write wikis, then I'm going to start introducing the readings. But I really wanted you to focus not on anything other than just getting in and out of the Tiddlies, writing new Tiddlers, saving them, making sure they work, and serving them. So the 3 things are saving, serving, and then sharing. Sharing is you go to a Google form and you paste the link. That's about it. On Thursday, I will run through this presentation, which is going to define and talk about those words, text, interactivity, writing, and designing. My plans for Tuesdays and Thursdays are to do about a 35-minute presentation from 10 to like 10:35, take a 10-minute break, and then do a workshop, coding, working from 10:45 to 11:45 or 11:50 when we're done. And both of those will get recorded on Zoom, and then when you come back the next time you look at it, there'll be a link there to a YouTube video so that you can play it again. That way, if you miss a class, or I want you to be focused during the presentations on sort of listening and paying attention, but not worrying about taking notes. So if you miss something and you want to go back and get it, you'll know that it's there. And during the workshop, focused on working. But if something's not working when you go home and say, God, it worked in class, but it doesn't work here, you'll be able to go back to the workshop and play the Zoom again. Okay. All of those videos get saved on YouTube. That's James's specialty. And so there'll be a little link to the video right there, and you can play it. And we're going to get better at writing some tags into the YouTube video so that you can jump forward to like the part that started at this time. And one of the things that James and I are working on is how do we create marks, spots in a video to a timestamp that we can quickly jump to it. So how do we pre-tag a video so you can go to specific spots? So we want to make the videos themselves, which are essentially linear, more non-linear or interactive, so you can jump to different parts of the video. And we're sort of working on how that's going to work. That's about all I have for today. I'm pleasantly surprised that it went so well, and I don't want to jump forward too much. I know one more thing I do want to cover. I want to talk a little bit about some of these exercises and give you an idea of of the kinds of things that we're going to move forward, at least for the first up through section 4. Okay, so hello world is today. Just you get something up there. Hello world, that's it. Okay. On Thursday, and the exercises that get discussed and presented on Tuesdays are due on Wednesdays, the next day. And that gives me time to look at them before Thursday's class. The things that are presented on Thursday tend to be a little longer. They're due on Sunday, the end of the weekend, midnight basically, which is the same as, if you get up early or work really late, it's the same as 9 a.m. Monday mornings. And so I'll start looking, I'll import them, I'll look at them on Mondays, and I'll reflect on them. And so those are a little bit longer. And one more thing, every Monday night at 7 o'clock, I run a Zoom session, and there'll be a link to it. The graduate students will come for those. Some of them will. There's like 20 other students out there in this class that are purely online students. And so that Zoom session is for them. We run a workshop, and you're always welcome to join it as well. So 7 to 8:15 on Monday nights. I'm just going to run through some of these exercises to give you an idea of what we're heading to. About Me is going to ask you to write a brief biography of yourself with links to places and stuff like that, links and tags. In Unit 2, it's kind of like everything gets a little bit more complicated. We deal with, first I call it shapes and then objects. And that will allow you to tag. I'm going to show you how to make little SVG graphics. Anybody ever made SVG graphics before? Scalable vector graphics. So I shouldn't call them SVG graphics. They're just SVGs. You're going to learn how to make circles and squares and triangles that are red and green and blue, and tag them so you can say, show me all the red things, show me all the big things, show me all the squares. Okay, and then you'll build a whole wiki so that you can navigate that. Objects, very similar, except instead of using SVGs, you're going to bring in pictures. My demo usually runs with cars, so we have red cars, and so we have red, blue, and green cars, and trucks, convertibles, and sedans, and you can do dogs or fish or whatever you want, but it's a set of objects. I think there's 18 of them that you build, and then you build an infrastructure so you can navigate amongst the objects. And that's basically to get you to understand tagging and navigation. Okay. In Unit 3, we reverse engineer Google News so that you can focus on what's called transclusion. Transclusion is when you represent the values of one tiddler inside of another, but you don't really reveal it to your readers. If you look at Google News, I cannot look at that story. So we'll go to, I just cannot deal with that story at all. So we'll go to this one. 4 cops shot in South Carolina, suspect in custody is a transcluded headline from some other source. Okay, there's a picture in there. There's a source, Fox News. There's a time 3 hours ago. There's a little bit of these are all transclusions. We're going to reverse engineer Google News, and you're going to essentially build a replica of Google News in TiddlyWiki. So we're going to figure out how they did it, and then you're going to reverse it. We're going to do the same thing for Wikipedia. If you go to come on. Pardon? The list of lists were reused in the next exercise. That's next, yeah. This is the same thing. Basically, if you look at this, we can make TiddlyWiki look just like this. Okay, so we're going to take a TiddlyWiki article and reverse it and build it in TiddlyWiki. And again, that's to get that concept of transclusion down. I'll show you how to take a TiddlyWiki table and bring it into, a Wikipedia table, and then import it directly through Google Sheets into TiddlyWiki. Okay, so that you can make it sortable and navigable. So it kind of steps up what Wikipedia tables look like. Okay. At that point, you'll understand tagging, transclusion, a little bit of importing, and a little bit of listing or filtering. Then we're going to, in number 4, the second half of the first half of the semester, so after the first like 6 weeks, the second half we spend thinking about the theory of hypertext. And I give you a series of exercises that essentially allow you to build your, what traditionally would have been called a paper, but you build a wiki about hypertext using bibliographic sources. So I teach you how to annotate sources. I teach you how to explore bibliographic sources and record it in your wiki, and then writing a narrative essay, and then 3 and 4 flipped. I have to flip them, and then doing an annotated bibliography, then writing a narrative essay, and then brief history of hypertext and hypertext in the 21st century are things that you write. So that's your scholarly work that you do for the semester. And so what we do is we go through some techniques. Then we think more deeply about for about 4 or 5 weeks. We think more deeply about hypertext for about 3 or 4 weeks, spring break, and then you have a set of projects that you do, okay, which is completely up to you. And by then we'll know each other a little bit better. Some of you will choose to build a game. Some of you will choose to build a set of characters that you might want to use in a game. Some of you will choose to build a marketing plan because you're a business major. CID students might choose to create whatever. Anything that you want to do, we can do, and then you'll have a much better feel of what you're doing. So don't even start thinking about your projects for a couple more weeks. Second half of the semester, it's completely tailored to the projects that the students in the class do, and we'll see where you guys are. And if there's like 3 clusters of students, then we'll divide in 3, and I'll work with each cluster differently, but it just depends on what we've got. So that kind of lays out the whole class. The one thing I haven't told you is how much any of these exercises count for, or how you're going to get graded or evaluated. I didn't mention any of that. A friend of mine was taking a class in another college, and he was a couple of years ago, and he was explaining to me, he said, I just have no idea what the grade is. So I finally asked him, I was like, what's my grade? The professor looked at him, and I do the same things. If you have to ask, then you're not really getting the point of the class. I grade you on what you do, how far you move. I'll know all your stuff. I'm not going to maybe give you an A or a B or a C on every single exercise, but over the course of the semester, I'll have a pretty good feel for what you're doing. And I'll let you know if you're in deep trouble. Basically, deep trouble to me means you're getting below a C or below. If you're here, if you work, if you try, if you explore, if you're open to the concept of learning and building, then you'll do fine and you'll end up in the A or the B range. If this is the last time I see you, that's probably an F. If I see you once every 3 weeks, but you're still getting stuff done, you're sort of hovering into the C and the D range. And if you just don't try, and to me, and don't convince me that you care, but you're still doing stuff, then we'll figure it out. But the grades, there's no points. There's no, I can't explain exactly how the grades are, but most of the students who work hard and show that they've learned and have the attitude of openness and exploration and interest in learning and a commitment to trying things and don't give up, end up in the A range. Some of them are Bs if you don't show up too much. And the ones who just skate by, those are Cs. And the ones who don't show up but get some work done, those are Ds. And the ones who don't do anything, those are Fs. So that's about my whole grade thing. There is I think there's, I don't have the syllabus in here. Maybe I do. Oh, course syllabus. Yeah. There's actually a course syllabus. Those are the goals. I could have started with that, but those are the goals. Those are the objectives. Those are the outcomes. Those are all the things I've just described in somewhat different words. Those are what we're doing in class. Those are the presentations, the workshops, and your exercises. And readings are going to be posted tomorrow. And there should be a set of policies that which I'll add there. I don't know why they're not showing. Anybody who's got these are the standard ones that show up in every syllabus. Anyone who's got any need for accommodation, please let me know. for anything, you know, and I'll work with you on that. And there's a standard set of policies, and there. Now I'm done. So I will see you all on Thursday.